TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else!
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes, to our favorite shows!
Oh, my circuits!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Flirting and Blurnsball.
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast, TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, but you can call me Wheezy, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show is the fantasy drama based on the novel of the same name by Philip Pullman, His Dark Materials, which first premiered on November 3rd, 2019 on BBC One in the UK, and then on November 4th on HBO in the US and wherever else it was premiering at that time around the world. It was brought to you by the good people at Bad Wolf, New Line Productions, Scholastic, BBC Studios, and the aforementioned HBO. This is night 2 of our His Dark Material coverage week. We did the graphic novel adaptation last night of the of the Golden Compass. And then Thursday, we'll be doing an on trial. Joining me to talk His Dark Materials was the woman who suggested we talk about this. This was her idea, so don't blame me. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us once again, Alexis Hejna. How do you do, madam?
Dealing with the recovery from a wasp sting. But other than that, doing okay.
How did you manage to get yourself stung by a wasp?
Oh, we got a nest that started growing on our front porch, and for the last few days it's been, I don't bug you, you don't bug me, while I was secretly, plotting to head to the store to get spray for the nest. And today I opened the door to go out to say hi to someone in the neighborhood, and apparently I just walked into the path of one of them, and they decided, oh, okay, you're going to actually come at me? Well, take this! And he got me in the collarbone.
It decided that you were threatening it, eh?
I guess. It doesn't matter. Like I said, I went to Target earlier today, and I got to treat those wasps to a nice little one-act play I like to call Revenge!
Was it a dish best served cold?
If you're asking me what the temperature of the spray was, I sure as hell don't know. I stood a fair distance away and soaked that bastard.
Revenge is a dish best served cold. Surely you've heard that.
Yeah, I know I've heard it, but I still don't know what the temperature of the spray was.
Oh my goodness. All right. So, His Dark Materials, as we talked about before, debuted on HBO on November 4th. And the last episode concluded December 22nd. This is around the time of The Watchmen. And other than I thought the polar bear and the armor looked pretty interesting, I wasn't all that interested in watching this. But you had said a little ways back you were interested in talking about this show. So some of this might be a little repeat from our discussion of the graphic novel, but for why? Why were you interested in having me watch this and then us talk about it?
Well, like I talked about last night, I did read the book, the first book in the trilogy, some time ago. I have the whole trilogy currently collecting dust on my bookshelf, and I really should read the second and third books since I don't have much else to do. And I remembered specifically the film Golden Compass, which I believe you said is going to be featured in an on trial later this week?
Yep, Thursday. Actually, I actually watched the movie today.
Okay. And I remember how bad that movie bombed because they attempted to take out all of the controversial elements of Pullman's atheism and attacks on the idea of the church and organized religion. So looking at this, I thought to myself, so they're actually going to give us another try. Then I saw the cast list with actors like James McAvoy and Lin-Manuel Miranda. I was like, okay, I am definitely intrigued now.
And Daphne Keane as Lyra Belacqua, otherwise known as Lyra Silvertongue. She played X-23 in Logan.
Yeah, I actually didn't know she was British.
Yeah, she's really, really good in this. She's actually a pretty good actress overall. I was when I realized who she was, I was very interested in the series. And this is one where I'm willing to say yes to a lot of things, some more so than others. And this one was one where I was like, well, we've got the time. It's out there. It's it's something I can make a big deal out of. So sure, why not? But I can't say I was tremendously excited about it. And I realized who the lead was, and I'm like, oh, I really like her. I bet this is going to be really good. Then someone from The Wire showed up, and I'm like, hot damn! now I'm hooked.
I should also point out that the first time I think they dropped a trailer for this and I got intrigued was also around the time, it was either right around the time or at the, right at the last moment of when Game of Thrones ended.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the world was on fire with everyone screaming, why did they let it end like that? And I remember thinking to myself, well, I wonder what HBO is going to pull out of their ass to make up for this fiasco. Saw the trailer, I'm like, okay, props to you, HBO. Nice move.
Yeah, nice pivot there between this and Watchmen. And The Deuce. We can't forget about The Deuce. You've not seen The Deuce, have you?
No.
No interest in The Deuce, eh?
No.
I
don't know what it is.
How could you? It's David Simon. He did The Wire and Show Me a Hero and oh gosh.
When are you going to learn that I didn't watch The Wire?
The Deuce is the history of the rise of the porno industry in New York City. How is that not interesting to you? Don't answer that. Let's just move on. So here we have, I mean, a lot, as far as plot lines go, it's a lot of what we discussed last night. For those that didn't hear the comic book show, it's the same plot, basically, as in the movie. It revolves around Daphne Keene's character, Lila Blakwa. She is given a compass that she can ask it questions and manipulate it, and it tells her the truth. This is a very valuable piece of machinery. The story revolves around this religious institution kidnapping children and wanting to separate them from their demons, and their demons share their soul. They're the animals, like familiars, as I said last night. And so she goes on an adventure. She's with Ruth Wilson's character, Marissa Coulter, but she escapes from her, and then she joins up with Egyptians. They go off in search of the children. They end up being joined by Lin-Manuel Miranda's character, Lee Scoresby, who's an aeronaut, and he's a cowboy, baby. They are also...
He's essentially an interesting version of Han Solo.
Yes. They are also joined by the Almond Bear, who ends up owing Lyra a debt because she gets him his armor back that he has since been tricked out of. And they all rescue the children, but the story's not done there. She goes in search of her father. Her father ends up killing the friend that she was looking for in his attempt to open a gateway to another universe, to a parallel dimension. And she goes in after him, and that is where the season ends. Again, fairly similar to... Well, the movie leaves out the bit about the father. It ends with them just freeing the children. And then her...
Yeah, from what I've read, the studio actually really interfered with the cinematic movie, the Daniel Craig, Nicole Kidman film, and demanded that they cut the ending so it didn't have that downer.
Yeah, I watched it today where, they have this big... I don't want to get too much into this, but, they had the big jailbreak scene, and then she just kind of flies off into the sky, and then the movie ends. I'm like, wait, what? There's still more to this. Which obviously the graphic novel deals with, and then the show deals with too. Very, very, in a very, very sad way. We'll get to talking about it in just a second, but
yeah, I get the feeling that the studio didn't want the movie to make Lord Asriel into the what did you call them last night? Giant bag of dicks.
Yes.
Yeah, I get the feeling the studio read the original screenplay and they're like, whoa, we can't have Daniel Craig as a bag of dicks.
Right. So, here's what I want to start off with. Kind of a weird place to start with, but, go with it here. There's a subplot in this that deals with our universe, presumably. And Lord Boreal, Carlo Boreal, played by Ariane Bacare, who works for the Magisterium, this is the religious institution I referenced earlier, keeps crossing between the world of his dark materials and theoretically our world, and he's in search of a boy named Will. I was utterly lost with what this had to do with the price of tea in China, but apparently Will and Lyra are going to cross paths at some point, and they are important to each other. Do you have any idea what that's all about?
Will is a character who's introduced in The Subtle Knife, the second book.
Okay.
He becomes incredibly important to the plot. This was the miniseries attempt to basically prep the crossover, so when we start the second season, we don't get like 2 whole episodes of, wait, why are we suddenly in the modern world? What does this have to do with this fantastical world with dust and demons and stuff like that? And frankly, well, I'll admit that I thought that the jumps between our world and Lyra's world were a little jarring, and it got a little hard to tell sometimes where exactly we were. I am really glad that they laid out this groundwork. It's going to make so much more sense when the second season starts.
Well, having you explain it that way, I'm okay with it. But I'll tell you, watching the series, and I have to say, the stuff that dealt with Lyra and her adventure and getting the kids back and her trying to figure out the compass, the discussions of dust, getting to, the time spent getting to know Scoresby, which I enjoyed. I loved Lin-Manuel Miranda in this thing. I think he's fantastic.
Oh, totally.
And Yorick Bernison, who is the Armored Bear. There's a lot of time spent on those characters because this was an 8-episode series and not a movie or a comic book. And so those were the high points for me. Every time we switched to our world and him sort of, going on this mystery hunt for this kid and the mom and all of that, I was like, A, I had no idea what was going on, B, completely disinterested. What was your thoughts?
I thought it was a little weird at first, especially, like I said, I hadn't gotten that far into the second book before. I don't even remember why I stopped reading the second book back in the day. I think just life happened and I had to put it aside. But when we started actually following Will around, it sounded like, wait, that's the name of the character from the second book. So it clued in a little bit. Originally, I just thought they were kind of jumping the shark a little bit on is there really another universe or not? But again, because I am familiar with the books, it started to make a little bit more sense.
I mean, did you find those scenes... I mean, here's the thing. The actor is fine. I think he's doing what the director and the scenes call for. But it's all very subtle and very underplayed. And I just, I found myself kind of looking at my phone, kind of, semi-watching in a lot of those scenes. Like, the woman who plays the crazy mom, she's okay. And I kind of felt bad for her. But like I said, for the most part, they're just not interesting scenes. And and if you don't know that these are allusions to the subtle knife, I guess, you have no idea what these are about. And it kept, there was nothing in those scenes that kept my interest.
Admittedly, I think there's also a problem that you come from one world that is fantastical and clearly has what you think is elements of magic because they got the demons, they're talking about the dust. I mean, if nothing else, they're flying around in freaking Zeppelins.
Yeah.
And then to just crash cut to our world, it really does kind of just bore you because you're used to something so much more fantastical, and it's like, and now
Right.
something completely different.
Like if you're watching Lord of the Rings and every once in a while Gandalf, shows up in, the East Village. Like, well, okay, but can't we stay in the fantasy world? I don't understand what's happening here.
Pretty much.
So, moving on. Let's start with, so what did you think of Daphne Keene as Lyra? Because we had talked about her presentation in the comic book where a bit too precocious, kind of an asshole at times, and she said, well, that's kind of how she is in the book. I thought Daphne Keene did a pretty good job in the direction of her, did a pretty good job of making her likable as the series goes on. She's not tremendously likable in at least the first 2 episodes, in my opinion. She gets better as time goes on, and you wind up rooting for her as she does very heroic things like the jailbreak, and she manipulates the King of the Bears and all of that. Sorry. But she starts off kind of an asshole.
She does, but that's sort of the way she is in the book. She's a child who's running around this college. She doesn't have parents. She has her teachers. Mm-hmm. And it's fair to say that she doesn't really have a good grasp on the way the world actually works because all she's known is life at this college.
I especially in the second episode, I believe it's the second episode where she's with, she's settled into Coulter's house, and I felt like every other word out of her mouth, and the book is a little bit different, as was the movie. She is centrally fixated on getting Coulter to save Roger, and it was, there was more of a focus on it in the show than I've seen in either the comic or the movie. Like it was like I said, it was almost every other word. I kept waiting for Coulter, and I guess eventually it does happen, but it was more about the althiometer than it was anything else. But yeah, she is like, they wrote her as single-mindedly fixated on saving Roger, which I thought, well, that's certainly an angle.
More or less, but I think it's also good to note that in the books, she does bring up Roger a couple of times, but not as much. But a lot of the parts with her and Mrs. Coulter really just kind of get glossed over, almost like a montage. Mm-hmm. So they did have to develop her a little bit more and give her more things to do. Interesting note, you know who directed the first 2 episodes of the series?
Tom Hooper.
The man who gave us live-action Cats.
Yes, I did read about that. He went from this to Cats. Fantastic.
I'm so grateful every day that you didn't force us to review that movie.
How could I possibly ever force anyone to review that?
You tried. You tried. If anyone wants to go back to our older shows, we had a bet going on it. If that movie made enough money, we would have to put it on Damn You Hollywood, and it didn't get even close.
It's because of the pandemic.
Yeah, sure. That's what you say.
What's her face there? Ruth Wilson is Marissa Coulter. What did you think of her?
She is freaky as hell.
What makes you say that?
First of all, there's something about the actress. I can't explain it. I have an issue with people whose lips look like hers.
Okay.
I can't explain it. It's like the perpetual duck lips. It just freaks me out. I hate looking at faces that have lips cut like that.
Interesting. Okay. She does have a look, I think. Didn't bother me. I thought she did a pretty decent job of riding the line between charismatic and menacing. like I never she doesn't come across as like mustache twirly at all, but when she's when she's hurting the demon in that second episode and later on, when they're at Bolvnar, however you pronounce it, there's a certain, she does carry a degree of menace, but overall I thought, like I said, she had a charisma about her, where I could see where Lyra's character would trust her in the beginning and and think she's a good person, I thought it was an interesting portrayal.
It is. I think she does get a little mustache twirly when we get later episodes with her visiting the Magisterium. You get the scene of her essentially forcing the Cardinals to let her continue her research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where you really start to see sort of the villainous in her come out. But I thought Ruth Wilson did a good job of not going overboard. She's not becoming Maleficent at any point.
Yeah, I kind of like how they went a little bit more into her backstory with this. The idea that she was married when she met Azrael, and she had an affair with him. And I think that ties a lot more into how she's so desperate with her research to find a way to keep sin from sticking to bodies, if, that's even a thing. The idea is like, if this was possible, then maybe I wouldn't have, fallen like I did and, strayed from my husband.
Which does go to the fact that I thought the series did a really good job of maintaining the religious overtones of the show instead of, they'd learned the lesson, don't run away from that. That's clearly one of the draws of this series.
Exactly. If you try to play it down like that, then you just have a very generic rebelling against authority mentality. And that's so overdone, you're not going to be able to hold most people's attention through that.
Let's take a break from characters for a moment and talk about the look of the show, the costuming and everything. As a person who does enjoy his high fantasy, this is one of those things I struggled with. And this is pretty consistent from the book to the show to the movie. I think when they're in the north and they're showing like the Aurora Borealis and and they open up the gateway and everything into the parallel universe, all that stuff is very colorful and very pretty. But I thought the show kind of looked drab overall. Like I don't know if that's what they were going for or not, but it just feels almost like purposefully bland.
I didn't mind it too much. Again, I keep going back to the movie The Golden Compass, where they purposely made everything much brighter and more colorful. I mean, you compare the way they made the Egyptians look in that movie to the way the Egyptians look in the miniseries.
Yeah.
The movie just, when they thought Egyptians, they basically just said, okay, let's get the characters from Hunchback of Notre Dame and put them in real life.
Yeah, the movie kind of goes for a more high fantasy look, whereas the series kind of goes for hobo chic.
Which, if you have seen people who would, for lack of better terms, be classified as Egyptians, that is the way they would dress.
No doubt. And this might be a personal thing, and that's why I brought it up, and, feel free to disagree. Again, it might be just my own personal thing. I like color. Even Lord of the Rings, being the best example, even in the, the dying parts of the world, Mordor, there's still color. There's still, deep contrast. There's a bit of vividness that shines through. I feel like I'm in another world when I watch those movies, or when I watch the Hobbit trilogy. Whereas here, I know okay, so another example, Harry Potter. I've watched all those movies, and the direction in terms of settings and whatnot, I always thought, despite it, clearly having a British flair to it, a British aesthetic, it still was very colorful, this is a world that seems interesting and bright. I don't get that from his Dark Materials. His Dark Materials feels like they were going for, they were going for, like London, but as we, like the drabbest parts of London, and I don't know. I struggled with that. Here's the thing. I struggled overall with this series. That was one of the reasons. And as it got to the parts with the bear and Scoresby and the jailbreak and everything, so like the second half of the series, there was more interesting stuff for me happening. So I clued into that and keyed into that, and that's when I started to enjoy it. But the first half of this felt like a slog, and not the least of which was because it doesn't look interesting to me. Like, the setting doesn't look interesting.
I'll go ahead and give you that. They were clearly going for a much more down-to-earth approach with this. And maybe part of that is because while this is a fantasy-based setting, we're not going to stay in it for long. Obviously, we're going to be jumping between worlds. And I think they were worried that we were going to have way too much of a contrast between the fantastical world, the quote-unquote real world where Will is, and the new universes that they're going to visit in the next season. I think they wanted to keep everything in the same style because jumping between these universes would be far too jarring and probably take the viewers out of the experience a little bit more.
I almost would have preferred it, especially since the world that Lord Boreal visits, our world presumably, and the world he's coming from were so dang similar. Like it took me a minute to realize, like, oh, this is a parallel universe London where you have talking animals and a degree of magic. Okay, and at first I was like, yuck, like, come on, take me to a faraway place. I was like, nah, Harry Potter kind of has the same thing going on, where it's a universe within a universe that takes place in the United Kingdom. I'm like, all right, sure, but there's, as we say in the Metal Hammer of Doom, a little too much sameness for me.
Again, I personally didn't mind it because I think I get more where they were going for. And frankly, comparing it to the Golden Compass, which was much brighter and much more colorful, and I am really glad that they stayed as far away from that as possible. And again, maybe they were trying to avoid comparisons between the movie, which I think we all want them to take a giant step backwards from. But I understand where you're coming from, so agree to disagree. So I could see some people not minding it, and I could see some people hating it.
All right. So, first 3 episodes. We have our introduction, Lyra's Jordan. We have the episode that deals with her and Coulter, the idea of the North. And then we have her meeting up with the Egyptians and going on an adventure, which is the spies. What did you think of the first 3 episodes?
I was kind of surprised at how quickly they kept the pace going. I mean, yeah, in the first 3 episodes, we are completely introduced to this world. Lyra leaves the college to go with Mrs. Coulter, finds out that Mrs. Coulter is the bad guy, and then turns up with this band of Egyptians. This is a mini-series, and each episode is an hour long, but normally something like this, you wouldn't get these kind of events rolling until probably closer to the end of the season. But they did a really good job pacing it out. And, you don't feel like you're being rushed through any of it. And I like that.
Yeah, like I said, I struggled with these first 3 episodes. I mean, I like the idea of the North, just because I like the interplay between Coulter and Lyra. But as things moved along, the one thing I liked about episode 3 was the reveal that Coulter was Lyra's mother, and that Azrael was her father, and there was shenanigans going on, and Lyra having difficulties with trust, obviously, because of that, and, her having to then refocus on, going with the Egyptians, to find Roger and all of that. But this was a bit of a slog, the first 3 episodes for me. Like, you're saying, like, they were going at a rapid pace. I was like, could you speed this up a little faster? Which took us to episodes 4, 5, and 6, where some real good stuff happens here. So you get armor, and this was probably my favorite episode of the whole series. First of all,
that was a really good one. No argument.
Lin-Manuel Miranda. Like, I don't really have an interest in seeing Hamilton, but I didn't realize how good, like, how much charisma he really has, and, like, how good of an actor he is. I thought his take on this Lee Scoresby character was frickin' fantastic.
Absolutely. I haven't seen Hamilton, but I hate to say it, I'm not looking forward to when they do the movie version of it, because I've seen enough of the videos of the stage performances. They have you can find a bunch of those on YouTube and such, to know that this is a play that relies on minimalism. Mm-hmm. There's no real sets. There's characters in amazing costumes, but there's no real sets or props.
Right.
And I am so worried that they're going to really screw that up with the movie.
One of the things I liked about the episode was how much time, and I didn't get any of this from the graphic novel, a little bit of it in the movie, but I liked how much time we spend with Scoresby and Lyra getting to know each other. There's a great deal of time of Lyra also dealing with the bear, and I think you get a better sense of who the bear is and his plight in this episode also. It's one of the reasons why it's my favorite, because I think, without having read the book, but sort of synthesizing what I got out of the graphic novel, this, and the movie, I felt like this best represented, and this did the best with the material of Lee Scoresby and Yorick. What did you think of how this episode handled those characters?
Well, one thing it's important to point out, the graphic novel did get this part of the book right. The entire story is told from Lyra's perspective. So any scene that she is not in is added into the TV series. So the series gave us all those scenes, like, all the development of Lee Scoresby. He does not get that much development in the book.
So a lot of this was invented for the show?
Yeah, and I liked it. I really did. You're absolutely right. I love they gave him... Again, it's a very fun, very Han Solo-esque character, and I really liked it. Lin-Manuel Miranda is incredibly charming. I love just the conversations he has with his demon, the hare, Hester. I really want to see more of it. I really enjoyed it.
Episode 5, The Lost Boy. This mostly deals with Lord Boreal's character and his whole plot line. So I can tell you right now, a lot of it just went right past me. The big reveal here on the other side is this is where they find Billy, who has been separated from his demon, and of course soon after dies. What did you think of The Lost Boy?
They really put a little more emphasis on how Billy died than in the book. In the book, he's very distressed, just totally out of it when Lyra returns him to the Egyptians, and later on they go to him and say, sorry, he died. The show gives more of the idea that he probably died because he was wandering out there in the snow in this abandoned village for, I'm guessing, at least a day. Maybe longer. And it's clear he just couldn't survive like that.
When I first watched this, I watched up through, I think, episode 6, and I had to take a break. It might have been 5, and then I watched, and then I was intending to just watch 6 and then go to bed, and then watch 7 and 8 on another day. And 6 is my second favorite episode of the whole season. 6 is the demon cages. This is where we find all the kids. This is where we find out that they're separating kids from, how they're doing it. And, I've seen the machine represented a couple of different ways. This is the most scary, the most ominous of all the interpretations of this machine that I've seen. This is basically like a guillotine that they're in, and it really is scary. And when they throw Lyra into it, they did a really, really good job. Because again, I didn't know, like, I had a sneaking suspicion, seeing as she's the star of this thing, they weren't going to separate her from her demon. But I thought the show did a really good job in the direction of that scene of building up a lot of tension and really bringing it down to the wire of how close she comes to being separated.
Not to mention, if you remember from the graphic novel, and that is from the book, Lyra was drugged when they put her into the machine. She knew what was happening, but she couldn't really do anything about it. They changed it into this one. Lyra wakes up as they're putting her in, and she is screaming bloody murder, and Daphne King sells that. She is screaming, and when she sees Mrs. Coulter, she doesn't even mince words. She's screaming, "Mother, mother." Right. The first time she's called her that. Yeah.
I mean, the kid's highly manipulative. But, you know, she knows how to get shit done.
Well, you say highly manipulative, and I say just scared enough to try anything. I mean, think about how people... I'm thinking about, like, scenes in movies where you have an adult who's terrified of something, and actually you hear them muttering, "Mommy," under their breath or something.
Okay, you know? Yes. But in the next episode, she's going to trick a bear into a fight to the death that he's going to lose. I mean, you know, there's a pattern here.
True, but I'm just going to say she probably hit that level of fear at the idea of losing her demon that she was willing to just scream out for Mrs. Coulter.
Okay, there is room for interpretation, and I don't want to argue with you too much on it because you might be right. It's not how I saw it, though. I think I'm sure there was clearly an element of fear there. That's not what I'm debating. Her choice of words in that moment, I don't know. And you know, but you might be right. I mean, how much thought could she have possibly put into it in the middle of being scared for her life?
And just seeing those children who had their demons cut out. By the way, nice touch. I'm assuming it was done digitally because I can't imagine them giving contact lenses or anything to all of these kids. But did you notice that everyone who had their demon cut, their eyes were dilated, their pupils were much larger?
Yeah, they got zombified.
Yeah, it gave it almost an unearthly look to it. And again, I'm assuming that was done digitally because I can't imagine them dilating the pupils of all these kids and then sticking them in front of bright lights while they're filming. God, that sounds, I'm sorry, that right there sounds like hell. It's even, you get a little hint of that with one of the nurses who is clearly acting a bit brainwashed. And you learn in the episode gone, it's hinted at, but it's confirmed she had her demon cut from her ages ago, and she survived, but her soul is gone, and you just really feel for this poor girl who clearly is, she's brainwashed. She more or less had the equivalent of a full frontal lobotomy. Yeah,
it's really, it's an alarming part of the story. You know, I mean, no one wants to see kids attacked, and that's what's happening here. And, you know, I'm curious, when Pullman decided to make that a big part of his book, like, you know, what's the inner meaning here? Like, what was he going for? You know, like a loss of innocence kind of a thing? Is it, like, you know, was he going for sort of, you know, a child abuse kind of a thing? I'd be curious to see, like, what inspired him to go that route with it.
Well, there's a lot up to interpretation, and I've read Pullman's first novel once. I've never read any interviews with him, so I could be 100% wrong on this. But I always felt it was just an example to illustrate in his eyes the cruelty of the church. Mm-hmm. The idea that the church would say, okay, fine, we can, you know, destroy the lives of all these children if it means that we will have more power and things will be better for all of us.
Do you think it was sort of an allusion to the sexual abuses in the Catholic Church.
Undoubtedly. Pullman has not minced words in the past. He is not a fan of the abuse of the dogmatism of the church. And there are a lot of problems with things like that, but let's not get off on a tangent about that. Otherwise, this is going to turn into probably the ugliest podcast we've ever done.
No, I don't. We're talking about the show, and I think it needed to be addressed because it was clearly an allusion. So we've addressed it. Great.
Yeah, but no, I again, that's my interpretation, that it was mostly the way of him saying these people have no qualms about hurting anyone as long as they get their way.
Right. So this is a great episode. Every time I saw this or the version of it in the movie, all I can think of is jailbreak. Tonight there's gonna be a jailbreak.
They really did a great job making it as creepy as possible. The sanitized conditions, the guards who all have identical.
Oh, when she gets there,
demons.
and they don't do this in the movie. When she gets there, she has to take off all of her clothes, which is a little, uncomfortable to watch.
And they're all wearing that nurse's acid green jumpsuits.
Yeah. So they save the kids. The kids go off with Egyptians. The place gets blowed up.
Oh, by the way, just tell me that was it as satisfying for you when Mama Costa breaks the doctor's neck?
Yeah, yes, very much so.
Oh, it was like, yes, thank you.
There's not a lot of action in these 8 episodes. Game of Thrones did a good job of, I think, balancing the political, social intrigue with sex, drugs, and violence. And that's not this. This is, there's not a tremendous amount of action, or a lot of hyperkinetic adventure going on in this, but you get a lot of that in this episode. Everything kind of builds to a crescendo here, and then you'll get more of it in the next episode. But which is fine. I mean, not every I'm not looking for every episode to be action-packed adventure, but if you're into the high fantasy, with the sword play and the fighting and whatnot, there's not a lot to be had here until you get to this episode, and they really pack a lot in because she goes off with Yorick and Scoresby in Roger in his balloon. And then they're attacked by the cliff ghasts, is what they're called, which this they did a lot with, and I was impressed with this scene. You definitely had a horrific sense of tension and violence and threat, and I was shocked by this because I was curious to see how they were going to handle it. She falls out of the damn balloon. And it looks like she's going to fall to her death because they're not exactly close to the ground. And I'm like, oh my God. And this is what I mean. I watched this episode and I fully intended to just go to bed. And I was like, I got to see how she survives this.
You mentioned that. You mentioned that on last night's show. You told your wife, was like, sorry, change of plan, staying up.
Yeah. I had to see how she survived the fall. So I watched episode 7. And they don't really say. They weren't that far up because he somehow managed to land in the snow and dusted herself off and she was fine, which I was a little shocked by.
It's snowing pretty heavily when the cliff ghasts attack, and they're pretty much in the clouds. You don't really get a good sense of where they are, but I think it's purposely kept like that.
Mm-hmm. When she falls, it looks like she's falling from a good 100 feet in the sky, at least.
Mm-hmm. And she's obviously knocked out when she lands, and she is in pain when she gets up. So she took a pretty nasty fall, but she is alive.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the excuse is she fell in the soft snow. But I have a sneaking suspicion if you throw yourself out of a hot air balloon, from the clouds and land in the snow, you die. Just saying.
Yeah, they did it in Frozen. They did it here.
Fair enough. She survives the fall, But this is when she's captured by the bears, and she does the she does the bit where she convinces the king of the bears to, that she's a bear demon, and that if he fights and wins, then she can be his demon. Of course, this bear's a fucking idiot, so they just go with it.
Well, he's an idiot, but they also added in the extra scene earlier. Again, this part wasn't in the book, where Mrs. Coulter tempts, I'm going to get the wrong one. Yofer is the false king? Yeah. She tempts Yofer with a baptism and says that, she'll get him inducted into the magistrate. Yofer, we get a little bit more with him that he wants to be human. For lack of better terms, he wants a soul. And I like that they added that because it gives a little bit more, compelling reason why he would believe Lyra and why he would be willing to fight Yorick, because she is tempting him with what he wants most.
I don't remember if it's this episode or the one before it, where Serafina Pekkala, who is also helped in the jailbreak, has a long conversation with Scoresby about how your fate is tied to this kid. Where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, The Witcher. Your fate is tied to this kid, and she's important, and you have to make sure you're there to help her out. And he's like, and he kind of has this kind of what the fuck reaction. Like, they paid me for a job. What do you mean I'm tied to this kid? And I think Miranda handled the scene well in terms of performance, that I was able to enjoy it. The dialogue was driving me a little nuts in that scene. What did you think of it?
Yeah, it is very cliche. Chosen one, right. Dialogue that we have read in so many young adult books. Kind of ridiculous.
I was going to say, we went through this with The Witcher. I don't know if you watched it, but, your fate is tied to this child. And I remember screaming on that podcast, but why? And everyone's like, you got to play the game. I watched it, and I remember stepping back after a few episodes going, for the love of God, can you give us a better idea of when you're jumping the timelines? Yeah, that one rewards you for paying attention, and if you're on your phone while you're watching it, you have no clue what's happening in that show.
Oh, understatement of the millennium. I was just saying, wouldn't you have at least grayed Jaskier's hair or given him a beard or something to show passage time?
Yeah, maybe a little something on the screen. Anyway, that's The Witcher.
That's The Witcher. If you're not paying attention, you're going to hate it.
So, another example of they really could have done something interesting with the Bears Kingdom, and instead it's just kind of a drab cave, which I was a little underwhelmed.
Well, they're bears. What do you think that they do?
They're armored bears. They're armored, talking, intelligent bears. I wanted, red carpets. I wanted stained glass windows of bears doing bear stuff.
A bear can make a stained glass window.
If a bear can make armor, a bear can make a stained glass window.
Clearly never seen someone actually make a stained glass window.
Well, I mean, if a bear works hard enough at it, I guess. But my point is...
What did you think of the CGI of the bears?
Nothing noticeably off.
Yeah, they really put a lot of money into their CGI budget to make these animals look pretty realistic.
For sure. Nothing really screamed to me, oh, this is CGI. This is clearly CGI. I mean, obviously it had to be, but I thought the animals all looked pretty real.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else about Fight to the Death?
What did you think of their cop-out to make sure that we didn't have to actually have the scene of Yorick ripping Yofer's throat out? We get a Daphne King violence block.
I don't know who the audience they thought was going to be for this, considering this was, in the evening on HBO. But I guess they figured, some kid might watch this. Maybe we don't want to make it too bloods and gutsy.
Oh, see, I personally had this image of the director, Jamie Childs, looking over the scene next to somebody from Standards and Practices and just giving them a gruff, "There, you happy?"
All right, and then finally we have our finale, our season finale. We have Betrayal, and we haven't talked about James McAvoy. James McAvoy, clearly a good actor, has had a multitude of different roles. What did you think of him as Lord Asriel?
You know what? James McAvoy is actually one of my favorite actors. I have yet to see him anything that I thought he was bad in. And as much as I hear so many people complain about Split and Glass, oh my God, he was brilliant in his portrayals in those. And I am so impressed how he was not afraid to make Lord Asriel, say it with me, a bag of dicks.
Yeah. He's very single-minded in this. He's sort of passively abusive to Lyra. It's more of a... if you'll remember, I don't know if you watched the Indiana Jones movies, but...
I've watched them more times than I can. Raiders of the Lost Ark is my husband's all-time favorite movie.
Oh, well, he's got good taste. I kind of liken it to like a Sean Connery, Indiana Jones relationship where he's not going out of his way to be abusive. He just finds the child to be a nuisance. He has bigger things to think about and deal with, and the child is not going to lend any kind of help to it, so he has no use for the child, but doesn't want the child to be actively hurt.
See, I think it's even worse than that, because at least Sean Connery did want it to be a father to Harrison Ford in the third movie. There's a line in this where Lyra looks and says, what kind of a father are you? And he says, I never called myself a father. Yeah. It's clear that he cared enough about her to get her away from the magisterium and away from Mrs. Coulter's husband, who they established was incredibly violent and went on an epic, destruction rampage when he found out that his wife had a child with another man. So it's clear he cared enough about Lyra to make sure that she was protected and safe. But he does not think of himself as a father figure, and he doesn't want to. This is a man he's a deadbeat dad. He's like, I technically, am your father, but, you really think I'm, it's like, I don't want to be a dad.
Right. He is committed to his cause. And again, doesn't want the child to be actively hurt, but he's not really worried about anything beyond that, which he comes to realize.
Yeah, we do get a really good scene in the end of the 7th episode, when they get to his hideaway, and you don't realize this until the 8th one, when he kills Roger. I guess he had evidently sent away for a child to be brought to him so he could use the intercision to open the portal. And he thinks for a minute that they sent him Lyra. And it's clear that he is terrified that he may have to. He's like, no, I am not killing my daughter.
Yeah, and that's actually his delivery of that line. I did not send for you. I didn't even put that together until you said it. Like, oh shit, he's saying I didn't send for you, as in I didn't want to kill you. What are we doing here? Yeah,
and McAvoy sells that scene, especially that 180. When he looks up and sees that Roger's there with him, and it's essentially, oh, okay, never mind. Okay, we're good. I can continue with my plans. Right. He just calms down so quickly.
He's like, okay, we're good now.
Yeah.
And to the degree that you can give the man credit, he does have a conversation with Lyra about life, the universe, and everything, and she's a child and obstinate, so... They butt heads a bit in that scene, but I do enjoy their interactions, such as they are in that episode.
Yeah, we do get a little bit more that now that this revelation has been given to Lyra. At the start of the series, all she wanted was to accompany Asriel on his expedition, and she wanted to learn with him. But now that she knows that he's her father, it's so she goes, I just want to be with you, and I want you to treat me like your daughter. And all of a sudden, she wants what she wanted at the beginning is now no longer what she really feels is important.
Right. Well, a lot of this is she's driven by saving her best friend, who, of course, he'll murder in short order. And now, what was once a desire to be a part of this man's life, now she's just seeking to upend him at every turn, which was interesting. What did you think of the finale here? He kills Roger. It's a very quiet ending. There's a lot of dialogue. And by this point, a lot of getting to Roger, there was a lot of tension and adventure, and will she get there in time? And of course, she just misses it. And once she gets there, it might have been the time of the hour that I was watching this, but it just seemed all very, very quiet. And then they go through the portal, and then it's over. And I remember watching it going, huh? And I had to go back and read what happened to oh, okay, I got it now. But yeah, it was. I don't want to say that it was underwhelming, but I thought, for a fantasy series, it was a very weirdly quiet way to end the show.
It was, but that is the way the book ends. It is just a little disturbing that Mrs. Coulter shows up and Azrael tries to essentially seduce her into coming with him. They did change it a bit. I'm trying to remember in the book if Mrs. Coulter said she just wanted Lyra. I think that was added for the series. And yeah, Roger's death is really terrifying because even if you haven't read the book, you're just sitting there going, "Okay, Lyra, please get there, please get there, please get there." And you hear a little bit more in the previous episode. Mrs. Coulter's talking about the intercision process, saying it's not perfected, and how there was a lot of problems when they first started it. So it's clear that Azrael's using a very primitive method, and that's why Roger dies so quickly, right, as opposed to the kids at Bolvangar who live, but what kind of a life?
Sure. So, overall, I'll give my kind of 50 words or less wrap-up of this, and I'll let you have the last word. I like talking about it with you. I like kind of being pushed out of my comfort zone, because, again, this is not something as much as I like fantasy, I don't know if I would have watched this of my own volition. And, again, I haven't read the book, so I had nothing really to really inspire me to watch this. But that said, this is why I'm always open to suggestion from the people that I podcast with, because I ended up liking it to a degree. The second half is stronger than the first half. It's a bit of a slog to get started. I'm very interested to see what the second season's going to be like. Again, having no knowledge of the second book, which is the second season presumably will be based on. I want to see where this is going. I'm interested in these characters. I really like Daniel Keefe as Lyra, and Daphne Keefe. Jesus Christ.
I was like, wait, what did you call her?
Daphne Keene. Take two. I really like Daphne Keene. I think she's great, and I think she does well in carrying the series. So I'm interested to see what happens to her character as we go forward.
I am really glad that they set more things up with Will for the subtle knife, because again, if they hadn't, and we had to establish, I'm sorry, you talk about how whenever we cut to Will in the real world, how you just got so bored because you had no idea what was going on. Imagine if the start of the second season was 2 whole episodes of that.
Yeah, they would lose me.
Exactly. So this was probably a smarter move, since they knew that this was going to continue, to incorporate it like that, so we didn't get completely lost when season 2 starts. But yeah, this was really enjoyable. The casting was all great. Daphne Keene is an amazing actress, and I cannot wait to see what she continues to do as she gets older.
So this won an Annie Award for the nominee was actually Aulo Licinio, for outstanding achievement for character animation and an animated television broadcast production. This was nominated for a Satellite Award, did not win, and it was nominated for a Visual Effects Society Award for outstanding visual effects in a photoreal episode. And it has an 81% based on 81% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes from about 90 critics. So, not bad. Seemed to have been fairly popular with the people who saw it.
So here's a fun little question for you. In the Dark Materials world, the soul is represented as the demon, as an animal which continuously changes shape until the child officially becomes an adult and the animal takes a shape. We talked about last night how this kind of calls back to the totems of the Native American legends. If you had a demon with you, what animal do you think it would be?
With me?
Yeah.
I don't know, probably a gorilla.
You did notice that all of the demons in this show were all mostly very small, so they could travel with them.
Asriel has a snow leopard.
Yeah, but not a big snow leopard.
All right, so not a gorilla. You know, you ask me questions, I answer you, and then you don't like my answer. What are you, my wife? All right.
No. I already have one husband. I don't need another.
Indeed. All right, so I have to pick a medium-sized animal. Is that what we're saying?
Or you could pick one for me, and I would pick one for you. How about that?
For you, peacock.
A peacock, really?
Yeah, peacocks are colorful. You're always doing crazy things with your hair.
Okay. I was going to say, if you just went with the obvious corgi, I was just going to be like, oh, come on.
No, I thought about you. I thought, in pictures that you post on Facebook, you've always got a lot of color going on. Peacock.
Okay. Let's see here for you. Let me think. I don't know why, but a Bengal cat is coming to mind for you.
Bengal cat, okay.
A Bengal cat. Kind of like a bobcat, so largish, but not too large.
Okay. Sure.
What, you want to pick out demons for the rest of the rat, like we did?
No. No. We're good.
Yeah, it's like, let's remember when we did the Detective Pikachu review, plug, and we actually picked Pokemon buddies for everyone on our staff.
You and Robert were having a ball with that. I was praying for an asteroid to hit the Earth. All right, so we'll... this was picked up for a second season, and it was just about done shooting when the world ended, so presumably this will be back, hopefully maybe later this year, early next year. If it is, we'll watch it and we'll review it again. We won't dedicate a whole week to this because there's nothing else out there. But I looked. There are no comics. And certainly there are no movies. But we will continue to do this series and see it through to its conclusion. So, in the meantime, quick plug your shop and any sales or anything you got going on.
Well, Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic. Unfortunately, and obviously, we're not making any appearances at conventions anytime soon, because what conventions? But our online stores are still going strong. We have our shops on Etsy and Handmade at Amazon. We just finished up a new line of dangle earrings made from Scrabble tiles. We're going to be putting those online. I'm hoping by this weekend, as long as Mother Nature holds off on the rain and I can actually get some photos taken. But this is spring, and I live in the Midwest, so it's essentially flip a coin on whether or not I'm going to have to run to the basement to hide from the tornadoes. But we're always on Facebook, Instagram, and Under Duress Twitter, and you'll always be able to find us there. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic.
Alexis will be with us next week. She will be joining me on a comic strip. I am not okay with this. We're going to read the graphic novel, and we're going to talk about the Netflix show. She will then skip a week And then she'll be back 2 days in a row. She'll be back on the 18th and the 19th, one to do She-Ra Season 5, and then to talk about the VOD release of Scoob. And then she'll be back the following week to talk The Three Caballeros Ride Again, and The Legend of the Three Caballeros TV show that was shown in South America that is currently on Disney+. So, a whole lot of Alexis going on in the month of May. You can hear her and I talk the Golden Compass graphic novel on a live source material that dropped yesterday. And if you're wanting more Golden Compass talk, myself and Sean Comer this week will be doing an on trial. I'll be prosecuting, he'll be defending. All right, thank you for joining us on TV Party Tonight. Be well, be safe, and behave.